Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining SEARAC's community call, Keeping Our Communities Informed. As you know, our goal every month is to make sure that we keep you updated on what's happening at the national level. Also, we do a lot of work in California, so we want to make sure that you are aware of what's happening there as well. And so today, we will have myself, I'm Monica Spade, I'm SEARAC's National Outreach and Field Director. My colleague Katrina, who is SEARAC's National Policy Director, and our California Director of Policy and Programs, Zoe, is also going to be with us today to share out on the California updates. And so just to go over logistics pretty quickly, if you've been on our calls, you kind of know this already, but for anybody who may be new, all of our attendees are already placed on mute. And if you want to make a comment or question, you need to be logged into the webinar. So if you're listening and you're not logged in, I think that can happen. Make sure you're logged into the webinar. And feel free to ask questions and comments throughout the webinar. There's a question box that you can actually, it's highlighted here, you can actually put your questions in, and we'll make sure we'll do our best to get to those near the end. And we also have a couple of resources for you to download, and so just make sure before you log off the call that you go ahead and download the resources that we have for you. So in SEARAC fashion, we love a poll. So we are going to start with our first poll, which is where are you joining us from today? East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, or the South? We'll give a few seconds to answer that. About 10 more seconds. All right, let's see what we have here. Who's on the call with us today? Let's see. Oh, there we go. Okay. Oh, look at there. East Coast, 38%, West Coast, 44%, Midwest, 13%, and South, 6%. I think last time, I don't even think we had any South representation last time. So yay, South, for showing up today. And the East Coast and West Coast representing it, also the Midwest. So thank you guys for joining us from all over the country. And so our next question is this your first time attending a SEARAC community call? Let us know if you're a newbie, if this is your first time. About 5 more seconds. All right, let's see what we have here. Let's see. Oh, I'm so excited. 47% of you are the first time to our SEARAC community call. This is amazing. And thank you for the 53% who are returners. Thank you so much for continuing to come back and allowing us to share updates and information so that you can continue to empower your communities. I'm so grateful that you guys joined our call today. I'm so excited. All right, let's get started with our call. And today, let me just go over the objectives pretty quickly. Let's see, there it is, okay. So as we try to make sure we give you updates from the previous month. And so we go over, a topic or some legislation or regulations. And then the next month, we want to make sure that we close the loop and let you know the status of those things. So that's how we're going to start our call off. And then we're going to go into our current national and California updates. And today's call, we're going to talk about census, public charge, our deportations and pardons, and some of the things that are happening currently around that. And we'll end with talking about how you can stay engaged and the resources that you can use to help you continue your advocacy and your own learning. And as always, we're ending with our Q&A and comments, and we try to leave plenty of time for you guys to respond and ask questions and comments as you need to. So if you are new to the call, let me just share with you a little about SEARAC and our national equity agenda, which is basically about protecting our rights, our immigration rights to family through immigration policies that unite, our right to heal, on health policies that address intergenerational trauma of war, displacement, and poverty, and really protecting our rights to be seen and serve through equitable education policies that see and serve our students. And those are three major pillars that SEARAC is fighting around. And so now I'm going to we're going to share our July recap. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Katrina. Katrina, can you share with our community kind of what's happened over the last month with some of the things we talked about last month?
Yes, thank you, Monica. So, hi everyone. As you all know, we did host a community call back in July. So a lot of these updates are just building on updates that were shared from that call. So we do encourage you to go back and check out our community call from last month if you want more details. It should be uploaded on SEARAC's YouTube page, and we've shared it out on Facebook as well. So the three main updates I'll be providing today are on affirmative action, the law visa sanctions, and also on census. For the affirmative action piece, this month, SEARAC joined an amicus brief filed by the Asian American Legal Defense Fund in opposition to a recent lawsuit claiming bias against Asian applicants in Harvard's admission process. This lawsuit is currently being led by Students for Fair Admissions, a group that's seeking to dismantle affirmative action policies based on unfounded claims on the use of quote-unquote racial quotas. We actually just found out today that the Department of Justice actually filed an amicus brief as well, but in support of this lawsuit. Just this week, SEARAC's very own executive director, Quinn, actually authored an essay that was published by the Huffington Post, sharing her own experience as a low-income Asian American with refugee parents who benefited from holistic review policies. And just so folks know, while opponents of affirmative action continue to mischaracterize this policy as racial bias, SEARAC continues to support the use of holistic admissions that take into consideration a student's entire background and history just beyond the test scores. As all of you know, Southeast Asian Americans face unique barriers stemming from their refugee experience to attaining higher education. Census data shows us that 65.5% of Cambodians, 66.5% of Lao, 63.2% of Hmong, and over 51% of Vietnamese individuals have not attended college. Affirmative action is a vital policy that supports education equity by uplifting a broad range of student experience as a valid and authentic way to truly gauge one's potential for academic success. So SEARAC is committed to doing ongoing education around affirmative action, and we will make sure to continue to engage with the community as we hear more updates on the lawsuit. The next update is around the Lao visa sanctions. So since the last time we touched base last month, SEARAC hasn't heard many new updates on the sanctions issued. It seems, from what we've been witnessing, that the Lao government seems to be holding strong against U.S. pressure, as evidenced by the fact that we have not yet seen any mass roundups or removals back to Laos. But despite this, we do still remain on very high alert. And it's difficult because there's really no telling at this point how aggressive this administration plans to be regards to possibly escalating the sanctions even further. Currently, right now, sanctions on Laos impact a very small number of high-ranking government officials, but it is within the State Department's jurisdiction to broaden that scope if it is something that is that the White House would like to happen. So we will continue to keep our ears to the ground and support community partners who are doing amazing work around community education in the Lao and Hmong communities. We'll also continue to basically monitor any news we hear here in Washington, D.C. And of course, we are committed to providing community updates and monitoring advocacy opportunities as they arise. And the last update is around census. So as we've shared through our listserv and social media, SEARAC engaged in a community mobilization campaign to collect comments, basically opposing the addition of a citizenship question on the 2020 census, and also advocating for disaggregated data or expansion and racial categories that's collected through census. And because of your support, we were able to gather 50 organizational comments, in addition to more than 800 individual comments. So we really thank everybody for your community support. In terms of our SEARAC's ongoing role, we will continue to monitor opportunities to provide feedback on the 2020 census. There is currently another comment period that is open right now that concludes on September 17th. This comment period is regarding specific data tools that organizations want to advocate for in terms of data collection. SEARAC does plan to submit comments on this specific period, but we will not be mobilizing community comments on this point, mainly because it's a little bit more wonky around like data collection and the use of data products. But if your organization would like to hear more, and if you would be interested in possibly submitting comments on your own, definitely feel free to email me at katrina@searac.org for more information, and we can also share out a copy of the comments that we plan to submit as well. In addition, and my colleague Goya will talk about it a little bit more later, we'll continue to advocate for community-based funding in California, and we are committed to continue to providing community education. And with that, we wanted to take another quick poll question. If folks can answer, of the issues mentioned, which are you the most concerned about? Education issues around affirmative action, the Farm Bill, visa sanctions, census, or all of the above? So I think this was a typo. Prosper Act was probably from the last community call. So for this purposes, I think it's just affirmative action. We gave updates in previous calls around the Farm Bill. There are no updates on this call on it, but do let us know if that is something that you continue to be interested in learning more about. So we're giving a few more seconds just to get a few more responses. We do definitely encourage your feedback. It'll help us tailor what to focus on for our next community call. Great. So, sorry folks, there's a bit of a lag. Let's pull up the results. There we go. So, okay, it seems like folks are most interested in learning about visa sanction updates as well as census, followed by education issues specifically around affirmative action, and then the Farm Bill, and then a number of folks are interested actually in all of the issue areas combined.
Thanks so much, Katrina, for that update. And it's still good to know, even though we didn't have Farm Bill on this call, that people are still interested in that. So we'll take that into consideration and make sure that we can provide any updates as they come out. So thank you so much. Now we're going to move into our current update and talk about what we're seeing now and kind of what's kind of impacting the community now and what we need to be focusing on. And Katrina already mentioned census, and so we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And just to let you know that SEARAC is part of a national coalition, and we're monitoring and advocating for a complete 2020 census count. It's really, really important that we have a complete 2020 census count. So I think we have a bit of a lag. I'm not sure why, but we'll just, there we go. So as you know, in our recent campaign, again, thank you so much for showing up big, bold, and strong. The campaign that we mobilized, we had about 2 weeks to mobilize that campaign, and we were able to get close to, over 800 comments in less than 2 weeks. That is absolutely amazing. And so we want to thank you for individuals and organizations who really helped us reach that goal and to continue to fight for our right to be seen. And so we're continuing to advocate around this. And as Katrina mentioned, it's around the proposed citizenship question and advocating for expanded data disaggregation with race and ethnicity. Well, since the comment period closed recently, we don't have any new information about the outcome of the effort. So we do know that the application for census will be released around April of 2019. So we expect to hear something obviously between now and then, but we're going to really keep our ear to the ground to make sure that we know what questions they're thinking about adding or going to add to the census. And so, a lot of times when we do our advocacy, we're constantly fighting against things. And with this administration and this political climate, it seems like there's just more increased attacks on our communities. But I will say one thing that has come out of this is that there has been increased national, state, and community advocacy for the hard to count communities, which are mostly communities of color. right? The Southeast Asian American community, Asian American community at large, African American communities, Latino communities. Those are hard to count communities, and I think because this proposed citizenship question has come up, it's allowed us to have a space for our communities to be aware of the impact of an incomplete census count. And so if we could look on a bright side of this, I think that is part of what we've been fighting for, is to be seen. And so this is one of the ways that we get to advocate and help the Census Bureau know that our communities need and want to be counted. And so SEARAC continues to represent the Southeast Asian American voice at the national level. Again, we're part of a coalition, and whenever we're in the space, we're making sure that we're bringing that Southeast Asian American voice to that conversation. And we're continuing to provide community education to you all. And anytime there's a mobilization opportunity, we're going to make sure that we share that with you so you know how you can engage and organize if you need to in your own community. And so what I'm going to do is turn it over to my colleague in California, Goia, who's been really tracking the census advocacy and how that's been shaping up in California. So Goia, can you share a little bit about the California advocacy around census?
Hi, yes, thank you so much, Monica, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So this year, advocates from the Census Policy Advocacy Network and the Chinese for Affirmative Action organization worked with the California legislature and also Governor Jerry Brown to approve and allocate $90.3 million for census community outreach and education in the state of California. So right now, the California legislature and the government operations are working together to develop an implementation plan for the $90.3 million, and they will have that plan ready to share out in October of this year. As the plan is under development, SEARAC will continue to represent the Southeast Asian American community in California and advocate for this funding to be allocated to community-based organizations that already have a direct relationship with hard-to-reach communities that Monica mentioned, which includes Southeast Asian American communities, right? And so right now, what you can do if you want to get involved is feel free to contact me. My email address is goia@searac.org so that I can send you the appropriate contact information to appropriate contact information with the government operations so that you can also have an influence on where you would like the funding to go to. And right now, SEARAC, we are saying that we would like that funding to make its way to community-based organizations. Right now, there has been an emphasis on ensuring that it goes to nonprofits, but we know that the community-based organizations are the people who have the direct relationship with our community members. And so the more they hear from us and the more they hear from you, the more they will really understand that there needs to be a priority for our CBOs.
Thank you so much, Goia, for the work that you're continuing to do in tracking in California. And so quickly, I just want to just share with you 5 things you need to know about the census. And so as we continue our community calls, we're going to try to make sure that we provide you with the facts and education that you need around the issues that are happening so that you know if you hear something in the media or hear something or see something on social media that, SEARAC can be a place where, you can get accurate information. And so I think it's important to know that the census is the largest source of federally disaggregated data, which is why it's really important for our communities to make sure they're counted, because this information that the census collects, it really does determine how a large amount of money, more than $600 billion federal funding, is really distributed to states and communities and families. And so that's really important. And because we don't have disaggregated data in all of our kind of other areas like health and immigration and education, we rely heavily on this data. And so as Goia mentioned and I mentioned, the Southeast Asian community is considered a hard to count community. And that just simply means that it's harder to get responses, whether that's enumerators or census kind of takers, if you will, that go to the door and do the door knocking, or whether it's responding via mail. And so it's really hard to count the community. And so that's one of the things that the census is supposed to be really trying to pay attention to and making sure that there are multiple ways that they can make sure there's a complete count. And it's really important to understand that when communities are undercounted, that it really does impact the political representation. It also impacts private and public resources. So jobs actually determine where they're going to locate, a lot of times based on the census. So if you're talking about jobs coming to your area and economic growth, the census data actually helps support that information. And so again, being undercounted really does deprive communities of color, and specifically Southeast Asian American community, of resources that they need for the community. And so finally, I think this is a really important point. Federal law does protect the confidentiality of all information the U.S. Census Bureau collects. So none of the information that you share with the Census Bureau can be used for any other purpose except for the count and for data that they get from that. And so we just want to make sure that's a point that our community is aware of, that the federal government cannot use it for anything else and is actually prohibited by law. And so thinking about the census, can you tell us, can you let us know, do you or anyone you know have concerns about completing the 2020 census? Oh, 10 more seconds. All right, let's see. Oh, wow, good, thank you. So it looks like 82% of the participants on the line are really concerned about completing the 2020 census. This is really good information for SEARAC because it helps inform what we need to do to make sure your voices are heard and that we are providing the accurate information. And so I'll just plug this right now. We have a post survey that we always do after these calls. And one of the questions is, what would you like to learn more about? And if there is any particular concern you have around census, please let us know so that we can make sure we provide the information that you need. So thank you again for sharing that. And so I'm going to move on to public charge pretty quickly. We brought this up in our June community call, so I'm going to refer back to that as well. And so if you haven't seen our June community call, please go to, I think it's on our YouTube account or our Facebook page, and you can see that call. But as you know, public charge is simply a test that is designed to identify people who may depend on government benefits as their main source of support if they are usually immigrating into the country or some type of family-based immigration. And so it's really important kind of to understand that's what public charge is. And so we've been kind of working around this for a while, where the White House is reviewing a proposal that would change the policy in the United States. And so we don't know when that's going to be released. We're still waiting on it, but we have heard talks that it should be released sometime in September. And so we wanted to bring this back up because SEARAC is going to be doing some mobilization around this to make sure that our voices are heard, and primarily because this change is likely to force families to decide between meeting their basic needs and keeping their families together in this country. And we've already seen this, and there have been articles of families who have already decided to stop using benefits because of the fear of what's been out in the media. And so there's a lot of media around public charge and that was going to affect citizenship and a lot of other things. And so we wanted to make sure we could clear up some of that misinformation for you. And so we're continuing to monitor the release of this proposed rule. And as soon as we hear anything, we're going to make sure that we share that with you. And as always, we're representing the Southeast Asian American voice at the national level. So when it comes to information, comes to coalitions, or comes to creating documents at the national level, we want to make sure the Southeast Asian American voice is also represented and heard. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to continue to educate and mobilize around this issue as we learn more about it. And so let me just quickly share some things that, again, facts that you need to know about public charge so that you can have accurate information. And so again, the public charge test only applies when a person is seeking admission to the United States or to become a lawful permanent resident or a green card holder. That's the only time this applies. Lawful permanent residents are not impacted when applying for U.S. citizenship. Okay, and so it's only when you're seeking to become a lawful permanent resident. If you're already a lawful permanent resident, it does not apply to you. And it's also important to know that your status as a green card holder or lawful permanent resident does not expire when your green card expires. And so if you have already adjusted your status, it's still good. So it doesn't expire. And rules governing public charge determination in the United States have not changed. But they're in the Foreign Affairs Manual and abroad, they've already seen some changes. But for the United States, our policy has not changed yet. That's what the proposed rule is about, and it hasn't been released. And finally, it's important to understand that refugees and asylees are exempt from this public charge test. So this is information, factual information that you need to know. Please share this with anybody that you know that may have some misinformation or some fear around this. And so we'd like to know if any of you have been aware of some of this misinformation around public charge, and if you could just let us know. About 10 more seconds. Okay, let's see what we have. Okay, it looks like the majority of you have not heard about this misinformation. Well, that's good. So for those of you who have heard about this, I hope this is helpful for you. For those of you who have not heard, if this does come to your, if you become aware of this, feel free to refer to this information if necessary. And so now we're going to round our updates off with immigration. And we have several immigration updates to talk about. And we're going to actually start with Katrina, who's going to share the national immigration update. And then we're going to transition over to Goia, who's going to share more California specific. Katrina?
Great. Thank you so much, Monica. So as a lot of you probably heard, in the month of August, we saw about 30 more Cambodian individuals deported. Following the 42 removals that we saw in April, which was actually the largest we've ever seen deported in just one flight. Mm-hmm. These ongoing deportations follow the Trump administration sanctions pressuring the Cambodian government to accept more deportees that were issued last year. To date, we continue to remember that over 16,000 Southeast Asian Americans have received final orders of removal since 1998. But over 14,000 continue to live in the country, basically in limbo of not knowing when they would be deported. Of this number, about almost 1,600 are Cambodian individuals and are currently still vulnerable for deportation. So we are hearing that removals will continue to occur in a very high number for 2018. We're expecting to see the largest deportation roundup basically in history for this year. Prior to this call, I actually touched base with our partners at the Asian Law Caucus out in California. And for those that follow them on social media, you're seeing that they've sent out a number of alerts around roundups happening in the community in the next few weeks. And I've heard confirmation from them that about 3 people were actually picked up in the Central Valley area yesterday. And about a couple of folks in the Stockton area are checking in on September 10. They've also heard reports of folks being picked up in different states around the country, including Kansas. So we are on very high alert right now, and we're encouraging folks with deportation orders who are being asked to report early to ICE in the next few weeks to please contact an attorney immediately to help assess your immigration case. Definitely don't wait until you're being detained before you speak to a lawyer. And then later on in the next few slides, I will be sharing a couple of resources, phone numbers, and email addresses that folks can use if you are concerned about possible deportation. In terms of SEARAC's role, we will continue to monitor updates from our partners on the ground as well as from here in Washington, D.C. We're definitely dedicated and committed to ongoing community education on the issue, specifically through these community calls and through our action alerts and our listservs. We're definitely here for folks that need resources and also for technical assistance. And we're also, of course, committed to ongoing advocacy here on a national level. The other update we have on immigration is, after the roundups and the deportation of the 30 Cambodian individuals this month, following the sanctions, of last year, our partners at Advancing Justice Los Angeles filed a lawsuit to challenge the indiscriminate detention of Cambodian community members with old criminal convictions. And I guess one good news is that we found out just this month that a federal judge ruled that this lawsuit could actually move forward as a class action. What this means is that all hundreds of Cambodians across the country could potentially stand to benefit from protections that this lawsuit is fighting for, specifically an end to unjustified detention. Unfortunately, this lawsuit is more of a long-term strategy. We're not likely to see any results in the near future, but it's definitely a win for a number of our community partners and community members who are at risk of removal. For those that want additional information about the lawsuit, we do encourage you to contact our partners at Asian American Advancing Justice LA for more information. And in terms of SEARAC's role around this lawsuit, definitely we want to be supportive to our partners at Advancing Justice and also continue to monitor the situation on the lawsuit and help share any information and resources that we have around it. And next I'll pass it over to my colleague Goia to talk about some news on immigration from California.
Thank you so much, Katrina, for that update. While our immigrant and refugee communities continue to be under attack, we, SEARAC, we know that there's a lot of different partners out there continue to stay committed to protecting our communities. Because our immigrant and refugee communities have been under attack, many community members have been seeking pardons in hopes to obtain some sort of relief from deportation. Earlier this month, Governor Jerry Brown granted 36 pardons, which also included 3 of our Cambodian brothers, 2 of which has been part of SEARAC's network, including Vanna In and Paul Sok. Although, to also share that pardons do not guarantee a dismissal of a deportation order, but will also provide some form of relief and help to build a stronger case. Simultaneously, partners including Asian Law Caucus and the Asian Prisoner Support Committee have been leading the charge on Assembly Bill 2845 here in California, authored by Assembly Member Rob Bonta. This bill aims to increase transparency and accessibility in the pardon and commutation process, which would, include requiring the Board of Parole to consider expediting their review of urgent pardon cases, as well as commutation cases, such as when the applicant is facing deportation, as well as ensuring that, there's ban-the-box protection when our community members are applying for employment. The Assembly bill has passed out of the Senate floor and is headed to the governor's desk. So for more information on how to get involved and encourage the governor to sign this bill, feel free to contact myself or our partners from Asian Law Caucus or the Asian Prisoner Support Committee. SEARAC's role is to continue to engage with our partners and provide appropriate updates, and also to get involved with continuing to monitor and engage our community partners.
Thank you, Goia. Thank you, Katrina, so much for those immigration updates. And so, do you know anyone that's affected by the roundups of pardons? We want to hear from you around that. About 10 more seconds. Okay, let's see okay, it looks like 65% of you on the call today, you do not know anyone affected, and 35% of you do. And so if you know someone, we're going to have some information that might be helpful. And if you don't, this information is certainly here for you to access when you need it. And so we're going to talk a little bit about our community engagement and how we seek to really engage the community in the work that's happening at the national level, also in California, and really specifically if things are happening in your state that we're sharing now could be helpful to you. We want to make sure that we provide that information. And so first, I think I'm going to turn it back over to you, Katrina, because I know you talked about, a lot of information that people can access if they are at risk of deportation or detention, or know someone who is. So can you share that information with us?
Yes, thank you so much, Monica. So these are some resources that I had mentioned earlier. We do know that, earlier when you in this webinar, we were going to alert folks that roundups would be happening soon. It sounds like roundups are actually happening at the moment. So again, just want to reiterate that if you have a deportation order, if you're being called in to check in early with ICE, and if you do not have a lawyer yet, we encourage you to call this number on the screen, 415-952-0413, to talk to a lawyer to basically do a screening of your immigration case. In addition, there's also an email that the Asian Law Caucus has set up that folks can feel free to use as well, kamairaid@gmail.com. There's a website that they have put together that has a lot of really helpful FAQs and resources, SEARAC.org. We encourage folks to check out this website. It was recently developed, and I think it has a lot of helpful information. In addition, we've been getting requests from folks who share that, their family, if you have a family member or know of an individual that might have been caught up in the last roundup and you need information about them. I was asked to share information by our partners with KVAO, which was formerly known as RISC, or the Returnee Integration Support Center. They're an NGO based out of California that really supports Cambodian individuals who are deported. So they support them with providing temporary housing, helping them get identification, and trying to support them in looking for jobs as they reacclimate into Cambodia. So this is their contact information. If you need specific resources or if you have questions about folks that have already been deported, info@kvao.org or billherod@gmail.com. For those who are advocates in the community or community organizers, we encourage folks to continue to call your members of Congress to demand public statements in solidarity with the Southeast Asian American community. As you recall, last year when the mass roundup happened in the fall, thanks to your help, we were able to mobilize support from 14 lawmakers who publicly denounced what was happening in the Southeast Asian community. And we really need to keep the pressure up on these lawmakers. Our long-term vision is to create policy change so that these deportations will not occur anymore. And the only way for that to happen is if our members of Congress continue to hear outrage from us. So we encourage folks to call your members of Congress, meet with them in district. If you need support with talking points and fact sheets, please feel free to email me. And if there's any specific follow-up they commit to that you would love SEARAC's help on, please feel free to share with us as well. We also encourage folks in the local communities who are seeing a lot of families and individuals being impacted by roundups to host support groups for these individuals. Oftentimes, detention can be a very isolating and very scary thing. For a lot of these family members, they don't know where to turn to. And we have a lot of community partners around the country that have hosted very simple community gatherings just to provide emotional support to these family members. Lastly, we encourage you to be active locally organized strategy calls with community leaders to monitor impact. We know that our partners out in Minnesota have been following the Lao visa sanctions issue very closely, and they're mobilizing to educate their community. And just encouraging folks to continue to follow that model. Community engagement is definitely very key. And an educated community is a powerful community. So we just need to be getting the information out there. And then lastly, I didn't write it here, but to put a plug in for the pardon bill that Goia mentioned earlier, We know that it passed out of the state Senate, and we encourage folks that if you live in California to please call Governor Brown's office in support of this critical piece of legislation.
Thank you, Katrina, for all that information. I know it's going to be super helpful for those who are working with those who are either detained or are at risk. So thank you for that. And so we also want to make sure that we keep you engaged and informed of what's going on. I think to Katrina's point, an educated community is a powerful community. And so if you're not a part of SEARAC's listserv, you can certainly go to SEARAC.org and join our listserv. And you'll get, we're going to provide education, alerts of what's happening in the community, our actions on census and our public charge campaigns. We're going to make sure that we provide that information to you. If you are part of our listserv, you would automatically get that. And so make sure, if you're not, you become a part of SEARAC's listserv. Also, the Protecting Immigrant Families is a national campaign. They are keeping the latest information on public charge. And so everything that is happening, they're on it. And so if you want to get more information about public charge, you can go to this link. You can click this link. We're going to send you uploads of the slides. So you can click this link, and you can actually get on their listserv and get information that you need for public charge. And SEARAC is always doing data collection for advocacy purposes. It helps with advocacy in the state, on the national level. So we would love for you to go to SEARAC's form and provide your information. And it has information about what you can provide and how this information is going to be used. And finally, follow us on social media. We are pretty active on social media, so we want to make sure that you're on our Facebook page so that you can get the information that you need. And usually our calls and all the things that we are doing is going to be posted on Facebook. So hopefully you're following us there. And as always, share knowledge with your community. Share this community call and share this information with those who you know could benefit from it. And finally, here is just a list of resources that you have access to. We've actually mentioned a lot of this throughout the call, but SEARAC has information about the Cambodian deportations, the website Katrina mentioned. There's a fact sheet that we've uploaded with this webinar, and we've also linked to the actual Assembly Bill 2845. If anyone's interested in reading that, feel free. And we mentioned our Executive Director Quinn's affirmative action essay, and so you can actually read that as well. And the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights is taking a lead on census advocacy, and so they have a lot of resources. So if you click here, you'll get a fact sheet or one-pager around why census counts. And two other resources that we don't normally add, but I wanted to make sure we added, is for employment opportunities. One is for census jobs, and I think this is really important because if our community members are part of the count and actually being involved with the census, it's more likely that our community is going to be counted. So if you're interested in that information's there. We're going to try to find out where they're putting their census sites so that you actually know if it's in your area or not. And SEARAC is looking for a policy advocate for our immigration work. So if you or someone you know is interested in working with our team to do immigration work, make sure you reach out to Katrina, and we'll share her email at the end. And so one more question, or actually not one more, the next question, the next poll is, of the updates shared, which are you most concerned about? Census, public charge, deportations, or pardons, or everything? All right, a few more seconds. All right, let's see what we have. So it looks like the majority of our community on the call is concerned about everything, all of the above, and deportations. And so if that's you and that's really something you're concerned about, we'll make sure that we keep you abreast. If you're part of SEARAC's listserv, make sure you do that if you're not, so that we can get the information to you that you need. And so thank you for answering that poll. Now we're going to transition to my favorite part of the call, which is actually Q&A and comments, because I actually love to hear from the community. I love to hear what's on your mind, how we can support you better, how we can as an organization serve you better. And so just really quickly, If you're interested and you have a question or comment, just raise your hand. We'll unmute your line and then share your name and just share your question or comment. Just for the sake of time, try to keep it around 2 minutes if you can, and just to make sure we can get as many questions or comments in as possible. And if you look to the far left, you'll see the raise your hand sign, and pick an orange arrow as the top icon, and that's where you would put your question. And so we're going to get started with some of the questions that we currently have. And the first question is, can you confirm whether AB 2845 passed the Senate?
Yeah, I'll take that question. So yes, originally it was to be read on Tuesday, but because it didn't make it onto that day, the Senate or the Assembly bill passed the Senate floor yesterday at 4:30 in the afternoon with 24 ayes so far.
Okay. Thanks, Galia. And the next question is there an infographic online somewhere for us to share on Facebook?
So I'm assuming the infographic folks are talking about was the urgent alert for Cambodian community members. And if so, we pulled this from Advancing Justice, Asian Law Caucus's Twitter account. So folks, feel free to follow them on Twitter, and that's where you can pull the image from and share from there.
Are there any other questions? So what are the most effective ways that student organizations, especially cultural ones, can get involved and contribute, especially if our members aren't aware about these issues? That's a really good question. I think one of the ways, and I really, really value student organizations because I think you have such a powerful voice. And one of the ways I think you can get involved is, one, making sure that you share what you know. And so making sure that if you encourage them to be on SEARAC's listserv, but you can also reach out to me, monica@searac.org, and if you have specific ways that you want to get involved, I can walk you through that. SEARAC is always, we're always mobilizing around issues that matter, and so our public charge and census campaign is coming up, and we would love to have student organizations involved in that. And what we normally do is share the information, the action that we need to take, and whether that's calling a member of Congress, submitting a comment, all of that matters. And that's one of the ways that you can get involved. And the other way that you can get involved is getting the information from our website and holding your own community meetings. And if you need information or technical assistance about an issue that you're not quite aware of, you're not sure of, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to share, help you kind of think through that. But one of the ways I think the best ways to get information out is word of mouth. And the way that we can get involved is sharing with other people and hosting places where we're constantly educating and engaging our community on issues that actually matter to us. And so if you have a challenge with getting the information, or you're not quite sure what you need to know, reach out to SEARAC, and we'll certainly provide the technical assistance that we can around the issues we work on. We'll just wait a couple more seconds, see if there's any more questions. All right, so it looks like we don't have any more questions, and so we will go to our very last poll, which is, which of the following would you like more of for our next community call? Is it updates, resources? Would you like a longer Q&A period, or more community education on the issues that are impacting the Southeast Asian American community? Or no changes at all? About 10 more seconds. Okay, let's see what we have. Oh, wow. So it looks like a lot of you want more updates. And so we'll definitely continue to do that. And following closely behind is more community education. And so that's super helpful for us to know. And right behind that is more resources. And so it doesn't look like a lot of people want Q&A or no changes. That's fine too. Maybe the more we do these, the more questions you'll have. Or maybe if we do such a great job, we answer all of your questions. So thank you for that information. That actually helps us determine what we need to provide to make sure we're being the greatest value and resource to you. And so I would encourage you to complete our post survey, because in the post survey, one of the questions we're going to ask you, what particular topics or what information or education do you want? So if you could let us know that, it would help us tailor our calls around what is most important and what's for you and for the community that you're living in. And so again, thank you so very much for joining our August community call. Without you joining our call, there is no point of doing the call. And so I really appreciate our engaged community, because it shows that we want to know and that we want to affect change in this country. And so it's such a blessing to be able to share these calls and to have our community engaged. If you have any additional questions or you need more information about our community engagement, you can reach out to me, Monica at SEARAC.org. If you have more national policy questions, you can reach out to Katrina at SEARAC. And for our California policy and engagement, you can reach out to Goia at SEARAC. And so again, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope this information is helpful and that you can use this back in your community as we continue to fight and protect our right to live and thrive in America. Thank you.